The rain came down so hard that night, you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. It was the kind of storm that made you wonder if the sky was angry about something. Inside what used to be a nice little house on Maple Street, Daniel Morrison sat at his kitchen table, staring at a pile of papers he didn't want to look at anymore. Eviction notice. Final warning. Foreclosure complete. Bank auction scheduled. The words all blurred together after a while. Daniel was 34 years old, but he felt about 100. His back hurt from sleeping on the floor, giving the only decent mattress to his 3 little girls. His hands were calloused and cut from trying to fix things around the house that were way past fixing. And his heart, well, that had been broken so many times in the past 2 years that he wondered if it even worked anymore. He heard a sound from the corner of the room and looked over. His oldest daughter, Lily, was 8 years old with brown hair that needed a proper cut. She was trying to keep her 2 younger sisters quiet. Amy was 6, missing her 2 front teeth and still believed everything would be okay because Daddy said so. Baby Rose was only 14 months, sleeping in a cardboard box they'd lined with blankets because the crib had been sold months ago. Daniel had been a Marine. He'd served his country for 8 years, done 3 tours overseas, seen things he still couldn't talk about. He'd been good at it too. His commanding officers said he was the kind of soldier who made everyone around him better. He'd saved lives, earned medals, done everything right, but none of that mattered when you came home to find your wife gone and your bank account empty. She'd had a gambling problem. He'd known about it, tried to help her, thought love would be enough. It wasn't. She'd taken everything, maxed out credit cards he didn't know existed, borrowed money from people he'd never met, and then disappeared one Tuesday morning while he was at work. She'd left the girls, though. He supposed he should be grateful for that. His construction business had been doing okay until his business partner ran off with their equipment fund. Turns out the guy had been stealing from other veterans too, running a whole scam. He was in prison now, but that didn't bring back the $60,000. That didn't save the business. That didn't stop the bankruptcy. A massive crack of thunder shook the house and Amy started crying. Lily hugged her close. Daniel stood up, his knees popping, and walked over to them. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just noise. Can't hurt you," he said softly, running his hand over Amy's head. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Amy whispered. His stomach twisted. They'd had crackers and peanut butter for dinner. Again. There was maybe 1 can of soup left in the cabinet. He'd been skipping meals so the girls could eat more. "I know, baby. I'll find something in a minute, okay?" That's when he heard it. Over the sound of the rain, there was something else. A deep rumble like thunder, but different. It got louder and louder until he realized what it was. Motorcycles. Daniel walked to the broken window and looked out through the rain. His driveway was filling up with motorcycles. Big ones. The kind that cost more than he'd made in the last 6 months. He counted them as they pulled in. 5, 10, 15, 20, and then one more, bigger than the rest. His Marine training kicked in automatically. His body tensed. His mind started calculating exits, threats, how to protect his daughters. Were these bikers here to cause trouble? Had he somehow ended up on someone's bad side without knowing it? The lead motorcycle stopped right in front of his porch. The rider dismounted and Daniel's eyes went wide. It wasn't what he expected. It was a woman, maybe 60 years old. Silver hair plastered to her face from the rain. She wore a leather vest over a soaked jacket, and when she took off her helmet, he could see kind eyes, the kind his grandmother used to have. She walked right up to his door and knocked. Not pounded, not threatened. Just knocked, firm and respectful. Daniel hesitated, then opened the door. He was still a big guy despite losing weight, still had that military posture that said he could handle himself. "Yes?" he said, keeping his voice steady. The woman smiled, but she looked tired and cold. Behind her, he could see the other riders getting off their bikes. All women. Every single one of them except the massive guy on the last bike. They ranged from young to old, all wearing similar leather vests with some kind of patch he couldn't quite make out in the rain. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir," the woman said, her voice calm and genuine. "We need shelter, please. The bridge about 2 miles up is washed out. We can't get across and this storm isn't letting up. We're stuck." Daniel looked past her at the group of women huddling against the rain. Then he looked back at his nearly empty house, at his daughters watching with wide eyes, at the eviction notice on his table. He had nothing to offer these people. No food to share, barely a roof that didn't leak, no heat because the gas had been turned off last week. but he'd been taught better than to turn away people in need. His mother had raised him right, even if life had knocked him down hard. "Come in," he said, stepping back and opening the door wider. The silver-haired woman's face lit up with relief. "Bless you," she said. "Girls, come on." They filed in one by one, 20 women and the one large man, all dripping wet, all grateful. They were careful not to track too much water, trying to be respectful of his space even though there wasn't much space to respect anymore. The last one in was the big guy. He had to duck to get through the doorway. He was probably in his 40s, Asian with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore an expensive-looking leather jacket, the kind that probably cost more than Daniel's truck used to be worth. "I'm Carol," the silver-haired woman said, extending her hand. "This is our riding group. We call ourselves the Rolling Angels. We were heading to a veterans benefit in Springfield when the storm hit." Daniel shook her hand. "Daniel Morrison. These are my daughters, Lily, Amy, and Rose." Carol's eyes softened as she looked at the girls. The other women were spreading out in the small living room, taking in the scene. Daniel saw their eyes moving over the eviction notices, the empty rooms, the sleeping bags on the floor. He saw the moment they understood. A younger woman, maybe 30, with tattoos running down both arms, knelt down next to Lily. "Hey there," she said gently. "I'm Rachel. I like your shirt. Is that a unicorn?" Lily nodded shyly. The big man stepped forward. "Name's Tommy Chen. I appreciate you letting us in, especially given—" He gestured vaguely at the house, at the obvious situation. "Everything." Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't want pity. "It's fine. Anyone would do the same." "No," Tommy said quietly. "Not everyone would. Especially not when they're dealing with what you're dealing with." There was something in the way he said it. Not condescending, not pitying. "Understanding, maybe, respect, you serve?" Tommy asked, nodding toward the framed photo on the wall. Daniel in his marine dress uniform, young and proud and whole. 8 years. Got out in 2019. Several of the women exchanged glances. Carol smiled. "We ride for veterans, raise money, awareness. Most of us are vets ourselves or have family who served." Another crack of thunder rattled the windows. Baby Rose woke up and started crying. Before Daniel could move, an older black woman with gray streaks in her hair walked over and picked her up with practiced ease. "May I?" she asked. Daniel nodded, surprised. The woman bounced Rose gently, humming something soft. Rose quieted almost immediately. "I'm Patricia," the woman said. "Former Army nurse. I know my way around babies." Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly as she held Rose. Daniel saw her professional assessment, saw the moment she noticed Rose was too light, too thin. But she said nothing, just kept bouncing and humming. "Are you angels?" Amy whispered to Rachel. Rachel smiled. "What makes you think that, sweetie?" "Daddy prayed for angels. And then you came." Daniel turned away quickly, his eyes burning. He'd prayed last night, first time in months. Prayed for help, for a miracle, for something to change because he couldn't do this anymore. He couldn't watch his daughters go hungry. He couldn't lose the house and end up on the street with 3 little girls depending on him. He felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to find Carol standing there. She didn't say anything, just looked at him with those grandmother eyes that saw everything and judged nothing. "I don't have much food," Daniel said quietly. "Just some crackers and a can of soup. But you're welcome to share it." Carol squeezed his shoulder. "We've got road supplies on the bikes. Let us contribute. We'll make it work together." The next hour was something Daniel would remember for the rest of his life. The women moved through his broken house like they'd known it forever, like they belonged there. Rachel and 2 others went back out into the rain to grab supplies from their motorcycles. They came back with bags of trail mix, beef jerky, protein bars, bottles of water, and even some fresh fruit they'd picked up at their last stop. Carol found Daniel's can of soup and heated it on his little camping stove. Another woman named Linda, who had short gray hair and looked like she could arm wrestle a bear, pulled out a full loaf of bread from her pack. Someone else produced peanut butter and jelly. "We always carry extra," Linda said when Daniel started to protest. "Never know when you'll get stuck somewhere." Tommy Chen stood by the window checking his phone, probably looking at weather reports. Every so often his eyes would drift to the Purple Heart displayed on the wall, next to Daniel's discharge papers. Next to it, almost mockingly, was the foreclosure notice. Pride and failure side by side. The girls sat in the middle of the floor, surrounded by these leather-clad women who somehow made them feel safe. Amy was showing Patricia her loose tooth. Lily was telling Rachel about her school, about how she was good at reading but worried because they might have to change schools soon. She didn't say why, but everyone knew. Baby Rose was being passed around like precious cargo, each woman taking a turn holding her, cooing at her, checking her over with subtle concern. When did she last see a doctor? Patricia asked quietly. Daniel's face went red. 3 months ago. Her checkup. She was fine. Patricia nodded but didn't look convinced. She seems a little underweight for 14 months. She eats, Daniel said defensively. Then softer. She eats what I can give her. Patricia's expression softened. I know you're doing your best. I can see that. These girls are clean. They're loved. They're cared for. You're a good father. Daniel had to turn away again. He wasn't used to kindness anymore. The world had been pretty harsh for the past 2 years. Carol called everyone to what used to be the dining room. The table was gone, sold months ago, but they spread everything out on a blanket on the floor. It looked like a feast. More food than Daniel had seen in his house in weeks. Come on, girls, Carol said warmly. Let's eat. They sat in a circle, all of them, 21 bikers and 1 broken Marine and his 3 daughters. Someone said grace, thanking God for shelter and safety and new friends. Amy and Lily dove into the food like they hadn't eaten in days, which wasn't far from the truth. Daniel tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but his stomach was growling so loud that Linda laughed and pushed another sandwich toward him. Eat, Marine. You're not impressing anyone by starving. As they ate, the women talked. They told stories about their rides, about the places they'd been, about the veterans they'd helped. The Rolling Angels, they explained, traveled all over the country raising money and awareness. They'd started 5 years ago when Carol's son came home from Afghanistan with PTSD and couldn't get the help he needed. We decided if the system wasn't going to help our boys and girls in uniform, we would, Carol said. We ride, we raise funds, we show up. That's what we do. How many of you served? Daniel asked. Hands went up around the circle. 15 out of 20. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. Patricia had been a combat nurse in Desert Storm. Rachel had done 2 tours in Iraq as a mechanic. Linda had been military police. These weren't just rich women playing biker for fun. These were warriors. Tommy Chen was the only man in the group besides Daniel, and he mostly listened, watching everything with those sharp eyes. But when Lily asked him if he rode a motorcycle too, he smiled for the first time. I do. My wife got me into it, actually. She was a Marine. She passed away 3 years ago, cancer, and I promised her I'd keep riding. So here I am. I'm sorry, Lily said with the simple honesty of a child. Me too, sweetheart, but riding keeps her memory alive, and it lets me do good things, which is what she always wanted. After dinner, the women helped clean up. They didn't ask permission, just started doing it. One of them noticed Amy's shoes by the door, worn so thin that you could see her socks through the bottom. She glanced at Rachel, who nodded slightly. Another woman saw the girls' clothes hanging on a makeshift line in the corner, patched and repatched. Daniel saw them noticing. Saw the looks they exchanged. He wanted to be angry, wanted to tell them to mind their own business, but he was too tired. And they weren't being mean about it. They were being observant. There's a difference. Tommy walked over to where Daniel was standing by the window watching the rain. It was coming down lighter now, but still steady. How long do you have? Tommy asked quietly. Daniel knew what he meant. 5 days. Then the house goes to auction. Where will you go? I don't know. Shelter maybe, or my truck until I figure something out. Tommy was quiet for a moment. You got family? Parents died when I was 22. Car accident. No siblings. Wife's family never liked me, and after what she did, they blame me somehow. So no family. What happened to your business? Daniel told him the whole story. About his partner, about the stolen money, about the bankruptcy, about coming home from war to find everything gone, about trying to keep it together for his girls and failing at every turn. Tommy listened without interrupting, without judging. When Daniel finished, Tommy just nodded. You know what I see when I look at you? Tommy asked. A failure? No, I see a man who's still fighting. You could have given up. Could have handed those girls to the state and walked away. Could have done a lot of things. But you're here. feeding them crackers and sleeping on the floor so they can have the mattress. That's not failure. That's courage. Daniel's throat got tight. Doesn't feel like courage. Feels like I'm drowning. Sometimes they're the same thing. Across the room, Amy had fallen asleep in Rachel's lap. Lily was showing Patricia a drawing she'd made at school. Rose was being rocked by Linda, who sang some old country song in a surprisingly beautiful voice. Carol came over to join them. The bridge should be passable by morning. We'll head out at first light. Thank you for stopping, Daniel said. Really, this meant more than you know. Carol studied his face. Can I be straight with you, Daniel? Please. We see a lot of veterans in bad situations. Some of them, they've given up. They're just going through the motions, waiting for something to end them. But you're still fighting for those girls. That's worth something. That's worth everything, actually. Fighting isn't enough if I can't win. Maybe, Carol said. But maybe you're not supposed to win alone. She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out an envelope. The girls took a collection last night before we left the hotel. We do it sometimes, pool our gas money, whatever. We had extra. We want you to have it, Daniel looked at the envelope. I can't. Yes, you can, Carol said firmly. And you will. Because those 3 little girls need their daddy to accept help when it's offered. Pride is good, Daniel, but pride won't feed your children. He took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was cash. He counted it quickly. $3,000, his knees almost gave out. I don't understand, he whispered. We take care of our own, Carol said simply. You wore the uniform. You served. Now let us serve you. Daniel's vision blurred. He tried to speak but couldn't. Patricia walked over and wrapped him in a hug, and then Rachel joined, and then Linda, and suddenly he was surrounded by these women, these warriors in leather, and he broke. He cried for the first time since his wife left. He cried for everything he'd lost and everything he couldn't give his daughters, and every night he'd gone to bed wondering if tomorrow would be the day he completely failed them. And they held him. These strangers who'd needed shelter held him while he fell apart. Tommy stood back, giving Daniel space, but his jaw was tight. He pulled out his phone and stepped into the other room. He typed a quick text message. Need full background check on Daniel Morrison, Marine Corps veteran, current address 428 Maple Street. Also need property records, bankruptcy filing details, and legal status of foreclosure. Have it by morning. The response came back in seconds. On it, boss. Tommy looked back at the scene in the living room. At this good man who'd served his country being held together by a group of women who understood what service meant. At 3 little girls who deserved better than the hand they'd been dealt. He made a decision. When Daniel finally pulled himself together, embarrassed and red-eyed, Tommy walked over and handed him a business card. It was simple, no company name, just a phone number printed in black ink. If you need anything, and I mean anything, you call that number. It goes straight to my personal cell. Day or night. Daniel looked at the card, confused. I don't understand. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Tommy smiled slightly. I know enough. And like Carol said, we take care of our own. The storm was dying down outside. The rain had become a soft patter instead of a roar. Amy woke up and climbed into Daniel's lap, still half asleep. Lily and Rose had both passed out, worn out from the unusual evening. The women started preparing to sleep, pulling out sleeping bags from their packs, arranging themselves around the living room. Carol insisted Daniel and the girls take the bedroom. We've slept in worse places, Linda said with a grin. This is luxury compared to that dive in Oklahoma last month. As Daniel carried his girls to bed, Lily stirred and wrapped her arms around his neck. Daddy, she whispered. Are they really angels? He looked back at the women settling in for the night, at Tommy standing guard by the window, at Carol smiling at him with grandmother eyes. Yeah, baby, he said softly. I think maybe they are. Daniel woke up to the smell of coffee. For a second, he thought he was dreaming. He hadn't had coffee in 3 weeks, couldn't afford it. But the smell was real, drifting through his broken house like a memory of better times. He sat up carefully, trying not to wake the girls. All 3 of them were piled around him on the thin mattress, warm and safe. Rose's tiny hand was clutched in his shirt. Amy was snoring softly. Lily had her arm thrown over her little sisters like she was protecting them even in sleep. Through the doorway, he could hear quiet voices, the sound of movement. He checked his phone. 6 in the morning. The storm, had passed, leaving behind a clean, bright dawn. Daniel eased himself out of bed and walked into the living room. The sight stopped him in his tracks. The women had already packed up their sleeping bags. The floor had been swept. The few dishes they'd used last night were clean and stacked. And Carol was standing by his camping stove with a pot of coffee, real coffee, pouring cups for everyone. "Morning," she said with a smile. "Hope you don't mind. We brought supplies." On his counter, which had been bare yesterday, sat bags of groceries. Bread, milk, eggs, cereal, fruit, vegetables, canned goods. More food than he'd seen in his house in months. You didn't have to. Daniel started. "We know," Rachel interrupted. "But we wanted to." "Let it go, Daniel. Just say thank you." He swallowed hard. "Thank you." Tommy was standing outside on the porch, phone pressed to his ear, talking in a low voice. Through the window, Daniel could see him gesture sharply, like he was giving orders. The conversation looked intense. Linda handed Daniel a cup of coffee, black and strong. He took it gratefully, letting the warmth spread through his hands. "Bridge should be clear by now," Patricia said, checking her phone. "Water level dropped overnight. We should be able to get through." Daniel felt a strange panic rise in his chest. These women had been here less than 12 hours, but the thought of them leaving made the house feel emptier already, made the future feel darker. Carol seemed to read his mind. "This isn't goodbye," she said gently. "We have your number now. We'll check in. And that money, use it wisely. Pay for food, utilities, whatever the girls need most." "The house is gone in 5 days," Daniel said quietly. "That money is amazing and it'll help, but it's not enough to stop the auction." "We know," Carol said. "But 5 days is better than 5 minutes. Something might change." Daniel didn't believe it, but he nodded anyway. Tommy came back inside, slipping his phone into his pocket. His expression was carefully neutral, but there was something in his eyes. Something sharp and determined. "Daniel, can I talk to you for a minute?" Tommy asked. "Outside?" They stepped onto the porch. The morning was beautiful. The kind that makes you forget storms ever existed. Birds were singing. The sun was turning everything golden. "I need to be straight with you about something," Tommy said. Daniel's stomach tightened. Here it comes, he thought. The catch. Nothing's ever really free. "I looked you up last night," Tommy continued. "I hope you're not offended, but I needed to know what we were dealing with." Daniel's jaw clenched. And you got screwed. Royally screwed. Your business partner, Vincent Hayes, he stole from 17 different veterans. He's serving 8 years in federal prison. The money he took from you was spent before you even knew it was gone. Your bankruptcy filing was legitimate. Your wife cleaned out accounts you didn't know existed and racked up debt in your name. You reported it, filed all the right paperwork, did everything correct, and you still lost everything. "I know all this," Daniel said, his voice hard. "I lived it. I know you did. But here's what you don't know. Vincent Hayes had an insurance policy through his business. It should have covered what he stole, but the insurance company denied the claims, said it was criminal activity and therefore not covered. They're wrong. Legally, they're wrong. But fighting them requires lawyers you can't afford. So what are you telling me?" Tommy met his eyes. "I'm telling you that you were a decorated Marine who served his country with honor. I'm telling you that you came home and tried to build something good. I'm telling you that bad people took advantage of you and the system failed you. I'm telling you that none of this is your fault." Daniel's throat got tight. "That doesn't change anything. Maybe not. But it should. And it's going to. What does that mean?" Tommy pulled out his phone and showed Daniel the screen. It was an email sent at 5:47 that morning. Daniel's eyes scanned it quickly, not understanding most of the legal language but catching key phrases. "Full payment of mortgage arrears. Settlement of tax liens. Foreclosure proceedings canceled." "What is this?" Daniel whispered. "That's a cancellation notice. The foreclosure on your house has been stopped." Daniel's legs went weak. He grabbed the porch railing. "How? Who? I don't understand." "An anonymous donor paid off your mortgage, your back taxes, and your legal fees. The house is yours free and clear. Well, it will be once the paperwork processes, probably 48 hours. The world spun. Daniel couldn't breathe. "Who would do that? Why?" Tommy smiled slightly. "Let's just say the Rolling Angels have a network. We help veterans. That's what we do. This is too much. This is tens of thousands of dollars. I can't accept." "Yes, you can. And you will. Because your daughters need a home. Because you earned this even if you don't think you did. Because sometimes good things happen to good people and you need to let them. Daniel sank down onto the porch steps, his head in his hands. He couldn't process it, couldn't believe it. 24 hours ago, he'd been 5 days from homeless. Now someone was telling him his house was saved. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, because I'm not done. Daniel looked up. Tommy sat down beside him. I work in tech. I run a company. We're launching a new initiative, building and renovating homes for struggling military families. We need someone to run the construction program. Someone who understands building, understands veterans, understands what these families are going through. We need someone with integrity. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a position. Director of Construction Services. 6-figure salary, full benefits, housing assistance, college fund for your kids. You'd be helping hundreds of families like yours. Building, renovating, managing crews. It's real work, Daniel. I'm not handing you charity. I'm asking you to do a job that needs doing. Daniel stared at him. You don't even know if I'm any good. Your service record says you led construction projects in 3 combat zones. Your business had a 5-star rating before your partner destroyed it. Every client you had submitted statements saying you were honest, skilled, and reliable. I know exactly how good you are. I need to think about this. Take your time. You have 48 hours before I need an answer. But Daniel, this is real. This is happening. You need to accept that your life just changed. Inside, the girls were waking up. Daniel could hear Lily's voice asking where Daddy was. Amy was probably looking for breakfast. Rose would need her diaper changed. Carol stepped out onto the porch. We need to head out. But before we do, there's something else. She pulled out her phone and showed Daniel a social media post. It was a picture of him from last night, taken without him noticing. He was standing with his girls, surrounded by the women, and everyone was smiling. The caption told his story. Former Marine, struggling single father. Served his country, lost everything, still fighting for his daughters. We posted this last night. Hope you don't mind. It's gotten some attention. Daniel looked at the numbers. 15,000 shares, 3,000 comments, and donations. People were donating money through a link Carol had set up. This is already at $42,000, Daniel said in shock. People want to help, Carol said simply. They just need to know where to help. Your story matters, Daniel. You matter. The women started loading up their motorcycles. They each came by to hug Daniel, to ruffle the girl's hair, to promise they'd stay in touch. Patricia pressed a piece of paper into his hand with her phone number and the name of a pediatric clinic that offered free services for veterans' families. Get Rose checked out, she said quietly, and those girls need new clothes and shoes. Use some of that donation money. Don't be stubborn. Rachel hugged Lily so tight the girl giggled. You keep reading those books, okay? You're going to do amazing things. Linda gave Daniel a firm handshake. You call if you need anything. And I mean anything. Someone gives you trouble, you call me. I'll ride down here and handle it. One by one, the motorcycles roared to life. Tommy was the last to mount up. He looked at Daniel standing there with his 3 daughters holding that business card, looking lost and found at the same time. This isn't the end, Daniel. This is the beginning. Call me when you're ready. And then they were gone. 21 motorcycles disappearing down the road in a thunder of engines and hope. Daniel stood there with his girls, watching until the last bike vanished. The house behind them was still broken, still needed repairs, but it was theirs. The food on the counter was real. The money in his pocket was real. The job offer was real. Daddy, why are you crying? Amy asked, tugging on his hand. Because sometimes angels are real, baby. Sometimes they ride motorcycles and drink coffee and show up exactly when you need them. Lily looked at the business card in his hand. What does it say? Daniel read it again. Just a name and a number. Tommy Chen, CEO, Chen Technologies CEO. He pulled out his phone and searched the name. His eyes went wide as he read. Chen Technologies was worth billions. Tommy Chen was one of the richest men in the state. And he'd sat on Daniel's floor eating crackers and peanut butter, offering not charity but opportunity. 3 days later, a truck arrived. Not a bank truck, not a repo truck. A delivery truck full of furniture. A real bed for the girls. A table, chairs, a couch. All of it simple but solid, the kind of furniture that would last. The delivery guy handed Daniel a card. All paid for. Enjoy, man. That same afternoon, a crew showed up. In tractors, all of them wearing shirts that said Chen Construction Services. The foreman, a guy named Rick with a thick beard, shook Daniel's hand. "Mr. Chen sent us. We're here to fix your house. Roof, windows, heat, plumbing, everything," he said to make it right. Daniel stood in his yard watching these men swarm over his broken house, fixing things he couldn't fix. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just the beginning. "Call me when you're ready to start. We have work to do. Hundreds of families need what you can give them. Tommy." Daniel looked at his girls playing in the yard, really playing for the first time in months. Looked at his house being repaired. Looked at the future opening up in front of him like a door he'd thought was locked forever. He typed back, "I'm ready." The lawyer showed up on a Wednesday morning, 3 days after the Rolling Angels had left. Daniel was in the backyard trying to fix a section of fence that was falling down when he heard the knock. His first thought was panic. Lawyers meant bad news. Lawyers meant someone was coming to take something else away. But when he opened the door, the woman standing there was smiling. She was young, maybe 30, wearing a sharp business suit and carrying a leather briefcase. "Daniel Morrison?" she asked. "Yes," he said cautiously. "I'm Jennifer Park, attorney with Henderson and Associates. I have some paperwork for you to sign. Good paperwork, I promise." She sat at his newly delivered kitchen table and spread out documents. Daniel's eyes moved over the words, trying to make sense of the legal language. Deed transfer. Lien release. Mortgage satisfaction. Tax clearance. What does all this mean? He asked. Jennifer smiled wider. "It means your house is officially yours. No mortgage, no back taxes, no liens. Free and clear. You just need to sign here, here, and here to acknowledge receipt of the deed." Daniel's hand shook as he signed. Even though Tommy had told him this was happening, seeing it in legal documents made it real in a way he couldn't quite believe. Who paid for all this? Daniel asked. "I need to know who to thank." The payment came through a trust. Anonymous donor. I'm not at liberty to say more than that. But whoever it is, they clearly believe in you. After Jennifer left, Daniel sat alone in his kitchen, holding the deed to his house. His house. Not the bank's, not a landlord's. His. His daughters would grow up here. They'd have roots, stability, a place that was theirs. Rose toddled over, pulling on his pants leg, wanting to be picked up. He lifted her, holding her close, breathing in that baby smell of shampoo and innocence. "We're going to be okay," he whispered to her. "We're really going to be okay." The next morning, another truck arrived. This one was loaded with groceries. Not just basic supplies, but everything. Fresh vegetables, fruit, meat, dairy, snacks for the kids, coffee. Everything a family needed for a month. The delivery woman checked her clipboard. "Morrison residence?" "Yes, but I didn't order any of this. It's paid for. We're supposed to deliver every month for the next year, already on the schedule." Daniel watched them unload box after box. His refrigerator, which had been mostly empty for so long, was suddenly full. His pantry, where he'd been rationing crackers, was stocked to the ceiling. Amy and Lily came running when they saw all the food. Amy's eyes went huge. "Daddy, is this all for us?" "Yeah, baby. It's all for us. Can we have the fruit, please?" He laughed, actually laughed for the first time in so long. "Yes, eat all the fruit you want." The girls dove into the strawberries and grapes like they'd found treasure. And maybe they had. That afternoon, while the contractors were working on the roof, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Daniel, it's Tommy Chen. How are the repairs going?" "They're going. Your guys are amazing. They said they'd have everything done by next week." "Good. Listen, I need you to come to my office tomorrow, 10 in the morning. I want to show you what we're building and talk through the details of the position." Daniel hesitated. "Tommy, I need to be straight with you. I don't have a car right now. I had to sell my truck 3 months ago. I've been walking everywhere or taking the bus." "What's your address?" Daniel told him. "A car will pick you up at 9:15. Driver's name is Robert. He'll bring you here and take you home. And Daniel, come dressed however you're comfortable. This isn't about impressing anyone. This is about whether you want the job." The next morning, a black town car pulled up in front of Daniel's house. Robert, the driver, was a friendly older man who talked about his own time in the Navy while they drove. The ride took 40 minutes, heading into the city, into a part of town Daniel had never been able to afford. Chen Technologies occupied a 10-story building of steel and glass. Inside, everything was modern and expensive-looking. Daniel felt out of place in his best khakis and the button-down shirt he'd ironed carefully that morning. A receptionist directed him to the top floor. The elevator opened into an office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And there was Tommy, dressed in jeans and a simple black shirt, looking nothing like a billionaire CEO. "Daniel, glad you made it. Come on, let me show you around." They walked through the building and Tommy explained his vision. One whole floor was being converted into the Veterans Construction Services program. There were offices for staff, a conference room for meetings with families, a design center where people could see plans and pick out finishes. "We're partnering with suppliers who are giving us materials at cost," Tommy explained. "We've got 3 crews ready to go. We have a list of 50 families who need help, just in this state, and we're planning to expand to 5 more states within the year." "This is massive," Daniel said, overwhelmed. "It needs to be. You know how many veteran families are struggling? How many good people served their country and came home to nothing? We're going to change that. But I need someone who understands what they're going through. Someone who's been there." They stopped in front of an office with glass walls. Inside was a desk, a computer, filing cabinets, everything set up and ready. "This would be your office," Tommy said. "You'd have an assistant, a project manager, and direct access to me whenever you need it. Your job is to assess the homes, plan the renovations, hire and manage crews, and make sure every family gets the quality they deserve." Daniel walked into the office. On the desk was a nameplate. "Daniel Morrison, Director of Construction Services." "The salary is $120,000 a year to start," Tommy continued. "Health insurance for you and the girls, dental, vision, 4 weeks paid vacation, college fund that we contribute to for each of your daughters, company car, and a performance bonus based on how many families we help." Daniel sat down in the chair, testing it. It was comfortable. The view from the window looked out over the city. He could see his future from here, and it looked nothing like his past. "Why me?" Daniel asked. "You could hire anyone. Someone with a college degree, someone with connections, someone who hasn't been bankrupt." Tommy sat on the edge of the desk. "You want the honest answer?" "Please. Because you know what it's like to lose everything. You know what it's like to need help and not know where to find it. You know what it's like to be proud and broken at the same time. The families we're going to help, they need someone who gets it, not someone who studied it in school. Someone who lived it. I haven't led a project in 2 years. You led a household through hell for 2 years. You kept 3 kids safe, fed, and loved with nothing. If you can do that, you can manage a construction crew." Daniel looked around the office again. At the computer, the phone, the nameplate. At the future, waiting for him to say yes. "When would I start?" Tommy grinned. "Monday, if you're ready." "I'm ready." They shook hands, and it felt like making a promise, not just to Tommy, but to every veteran family out there struggling like Daniel had struggled. He was going to help them. He was going to make sure nobody else fell through the cracks the way he almost had. On his way out, Tommy handed him a set of keys. "Company car is parked in space 247. It's yours. Silver SUV, 3 rows, plenty of room for the girls." Daniel took the keys, speechless. A job, an office, a car. 3 days ago, he'd been 5 days from homeless. When Robert dropped him off at home, the girls were playing in the front yard with new toys that Patricia had sent. Lily ran over to him. "Daddy, look. We got packages. There's new clothes and shoes and books." Inside, the contractor foreman Rick was finishing up the last of the repairs. The house looked transformed. The roof was solid. The windows were new. The heat was working. The plumbing didn't leak anymore. "All done," Rick said, wiping his hands. "Had the inspector come through this morning. Everything passed. You're good to go." "Thank you," Daniel said. "Really, thank you. Don't thank me. Thank your friend. Mr. Chen is a good man. Takes care of people." That evening, Daniel cooked dinner in his repaired kitchen. Real dinner with vegetables and meat and sides. The girls sat at their new table, eating off new plates, using new silverware. They laughed and talked and were just kids being kids without the weight of worry they'd been carrying. After dinner, Daniel's phone buzzed. It was a text from Carol, the silver-haired leader of the Rolling Angels. "Saw the news about your new job. Proud of you. But more than that, grateful. You're going to change lives, Daniel. Just like you changed ours that night. Sometimes the people we help end up helping us more. Ride safe, Marine." Daniel sat on his newly repaired porch as the sun set, watching his girls play in the yard. He thought about the storm that had brought those motorcycles to his door. He thought about how close he'd come to losing everything. He thought about 20 women in leather who'd seen something in him that he couldn't see in himself. His phone rang. It was a local news station. Mr. Morrison, we'd like to do a story on you and the Rolling Angels. The post about your family has gone viral. People want to know more. Would you be willing to talk to us? Daniel thought about it, thought about all the other families out there struggling, thinking they were alone, thought about how sharing his story might help them find the help they needed. Yes, he said, I'll talk to you. But only if we can talk about the Angels too. They're the real heroes. The interview happened 2 days later. The reporter, a woman named Kelly, was kind and respectful. She interviewed Daniel, the girls, and even got Tommy and Carol on camera. The story ran that evening on the local news, and by morning it had been picked up nationally. The video showed Daniel in his repaired home talking about losing everything. It showed Lily, Amy, and Rose happy and healthy. It showed Tommy explaining the new Veterans Construction Services program. And it showed Carol and the Rolling Angels riding down the highway, helping veterans one storm at a time. The donations exploded. The website Tommy had set up for the construction program crashed from too much traffic. By the end of the week, they had enough money to help 200 families instead of 50. And then something unexpected happened. A man named Richard Castellano called Tommy directly. Richard Castellano was 72 years old, a self-made millionaire who'd built his fortune in real estate development after serving in Vietnam. He'd seen the news story about Daniel and the Rolling Angels, and something about it had grabbed hold of him and wouldn't let go. He called Tommy's direct line at 7 in the morning on a Saturday. Mr. Chen, you don't know me, but my name is Richard Castellano. I want in on what you're doing. Tommy, who'd been drinking his coffee and reading reports, sat up straighter. I'm listening. I served in Vietnam. Lost a lot of friends over there. Came home to people spitting at us, calling us names. Had to build my life from nothing because nobody wanted to hire a veteran back then. I promised myself if I ever made it, I'd help guys like me. I've been looking for the right cause. I think I just found it. What exactly are you proposing? Tommy asked. I'll match your investment dollar for dollar. I own commercial properties in 5 states, residential properties in 3. I've got buildings that need renovation, apartments that could house families, warehouses that could be converted. I want to employ veterans to do the work. I want to house veterans who need it. And I want Daniel Morrison to run the whole operation. Tommy smiled. That's a generous offer, Mr. Castellano. Call me Richard. And it's not generous, it's smart business. That Morrison kid, he's the real deal. I can see it. You can't fake what he's been through. He's got the heart for this work. And these Rolling Angels, they found him. That means something. When can you meet? I'm flying in tomorrow. They met at Tommy's office on Sunday afternoon. Richard was a short, stocky man with white hair and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He walked with a slight limp, a souvenir from Vietnam. He shook Daniel's hand with a grip like iron. You're the Marine, Richard said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. I worked for a living, Richard said with a grin, using the old military joke. You ever do commercial construction? Some. Mostly residential, but I supervised a warehouse conversion before my business went under. Good enough. You're about to learn on the job. Over the next 3 hours, they mapped out an expansion plan that made Daniel's head spin. Richard owned 16 properties that could be converted into low-cost housing for veteran families. He had 3 commercial buildings that needed complete renovation. He had connections with suppliers, contractors, and city officials. We hire veterans to do the work, Richard explained. Train them, pay them fair wages, give them purpose. Then we house veterans in the finished properties at below-market rates. It's a complete cycle. We lift people up, then they lift others up. Tommy pulled out financial projections. With Richard's contribution, they could employ 50 veterans immediately, with plans to scale to 200 within a year. They could house 30 families right away with capacity for 100 by year's end. I want the first project to be special, Richard said. Something that shows what we're capable of. I got a property in mind. It's an old apartment complex, 12 units in rough shape. Previous owner went bankrupt. I bought it at auction. It's in a good neighborhood, good schools. Let's renovate it top to bottom and fill it with veteran families. Daniel felt something rising in his chest. Hope, maybe. Purpose, definitely. When do we start? He asked. Richard grinned. Already started, son. I've got architects drawing up plans. We break ground in 2 weeks. The project became known as Liberty Gardens. 12 apartments completely renovated. Each one customized for the family that would live there. Daniel hired his first crew. All veterans, all guys who needed a second chance just like he'd gotten. There was Kevin, a former Army medic who'd been homeless for 6 months after his PTSD got too bad to work. There was Jerome, a Navy veteran who'd lost his job when his old injury flared up and his employer wouldn't accommodate him. There was David, an Air Force guy who'd been working 3 part-time jobs trying to feed his family. Daniel knew their stories because they were his story. Different details, same desperation. He trained them, taught them, and built them back up. Just like the Rolling Angels had done for him. Carol and the Angels visited the job site once a month, bringing lunch for the crew, checking on progress, making sure everyone knew they weren't forgotten. Patricia examined every family that moved in, making sure kids got medical care. Rachel set up a donation system for furniture and household supplies. 6 months into the project, Daniel stood at the first apartment completion. A family was moving in, a Marine veteran named Chris who'd been living in his car with his wife and 2 sons. They walked through the door into their renovated home and Chris's wife started crying. "Is this really ours?" she kept asking. "We get to stay here?" "For as long as you need," Daniel told her. "And when you're ready to move on, another family will move in." "We keep the cycle going." Chris shook Daniel's hand, his jaw tight with emotion. "I served 3 tours. I did everything right. But nothing went right when I came home. I was starting to think nobody cared." "We care," Daniel said simply. "And you're not alone anymore." The local news came back to cover the opening of Liberty Gardens. This time they didn't just interview Daniel. They interviewed the families moving in, the veterans working the crew, Tommy, Richard, and the Rolling Angels. Amy, Daniel's 6-year-old, got on camera and said, "My daddy helps people now. He says angels helped us, so now we help other people. That's what you're supposed to do." The segment went viral again. More donations poured in. More properties became available. More veterans signed up to work. 1 year after the storm, Daniel stood at a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the 10th completed project. They'd renovated 100 apartments across 3 states. They'd employed 83 veterans. They'd helped over 200 families get back on their feet. The Rolling Angels arrived on their motorcycles, 20 women and Tommy, all wearing their leather vests with pride. Carol walked up to Daniel and he wrapped her in a hug. "Thank you," he said for the 1,000th time, "for everything." Carol pulled back and looked at him. "You know what, Daniel? We really did need shelter that night. We were lost, all of us, in different ways. We ride around helping people, but we needed to be reminded why we do it. You gave us that. You and your girls, you gave us purpose again." Patricia was holding Rose, who was now almost 2.5, healthy and happy. Linda was teaching Lily how to throw a football. Rachel had brought gifts for Amy, books about strong women and brave girls. Tommy pulled Daniel aside. "I need to tell you something." "Okay. You remember that first night when I gave you my card?" "Of course. I almost didn't do it. I almost just left with the group. Figured you'd be fine with the donation money, moved on to the next thing. But something made me stop. Call it instinct, call it fate, whatever. I stopped and I gave you that card. And that decision changed everything." "Changed everything for me," Daniel said. "No, for me too. This program, what we've built, it's the most important thing I've ever done. My tech company makes money, that's great. But this, helping veterans, giving people second chances, this matters. You showed me what matters." Richard joined them, leaning on his cane. "You know what I love about this project?" he asked. "It's not about handouts. It's about hands up. We help people climb, then they help the next person climb. That's how it's supposed to work." The ceremony began. Families who'd been helped by the program spoke about their experiences. A woman named Lisa talked about how she'd been living in a shelter with her 3 kids after her husband died in service. Now she had a home and her oldest son was working on one of Daniel's crews learning construction. A man named Robert, a Gulf War veteran, talked about how depression had cost him everything. The program didn't just give him a home, it gave him a job, a purpose, a reason to care.